Okay, thank you. So we are going to start with consent agenda for the Montecito Board Architecture Review meeting on July 23rd. And we have one item. It's 85, 87, and 89 Butterfly Lane. If the applicant are here, thank you. So this item was last in front of the board on June 25th, 2026. And there was no public comment, but the board did have several comments. And number one is to increase the size of the planter near the eucalyptus tree and adding landscaping. Number two, establish a hierarchy between the walkway to the front of the dwelling, 85 Butterfly Lane, and the walkway from the paved parking area. And number three, restudy the carport. Consider the design that represents a garden trellis with a primary, secondary, and tertiary configuration. And so this item is here for final. And if you can address those comments and go to the drawings. Thank you.
Can we put the site plan up, please?
Thanks for reading the comments. Yeah, we were here a couple weeks ago. Would you like us to go through the full plan set or just address?
Let's just go through the comments and your name for the record.
Caitlin Ernest with SEPS Land Use Consulting. We have David Winitsky, project architect, and online Sarah Alexander, the landscape architect.
Thank you.
So the first two comments Sarah will address.
Okay, it's L 2.0. I'm not sure which page it is. It's going to be, I think yes, it's that one. Okay, so we made this semicircle planter adjacent to the driveway in the front. We made it larger and more generous so it can accommodate more planting. And the planting and then we also changed this path that links the driveway to the main entry path. We changed it from flagstone to decomposed granite to create that hierarchy. I chose decomposed granite because it still allows somebody to wheel something from the driveway to the entrance of the house. Those are those changes. And then the additional planting next to the driveway is shown on L 3.0, which will be a few pages down. Yeah, that one. Yeah, so it just shows that we were able. I'm actually
I'm sorry, can we at least, do we have the previous site plan handy? I got confused by what I was looking at and what I'm seeing now. I saw the pathway was clearly addressed. I didn't see
it's L 2.0. It is considerably bigger.
Along those lines, I just wanted to ask the question, and I think this was explained, but I guess there's some notion that now you're creating separate properties, but is the goal to unify these or something someday? And that speaks to, and where I'm going with it is that fence that you're showing between the two properties down the driveway. It seems to me that you would want, and this isn't what I asked for. If you enlarge the planter, that is what I asked for. But I mean, it seems like you would want landscaping on both sides of that fence for no other reason to protect the fence. It seems like it's really easy to back into on both sides, so that if you had a little bit of a planter strip on that side, it would create the nice separation. And so I don't understand, I guess.
That's your comment. Which one is the number one?
It's in regards to widening the driveway, and so it goes to why wouldn't you just simply have planting on both sides of the fence, just to protect the fence and, or is the intent to kind of unify these somehow? I thought that maybe was mentioned on the
Well,
very first meeting, so I'm just kind of
The-
trying to
yes.
get to the reason, rationale behind it, that's all.
Yeah, the intent is for the owners to have the option to use it as a single driveway. But if they ever wanted to sell one of the properties or both of the properties, to be able to sell them separately. And then to be able to
David, come back
divide
to the
them.
today.
So the fence wouldn't be put up initially is what you're suggesting?
Yeah, that's the,
Okay, so then
that is the
okay.
intention.
So then that's
that
why I
doesn't
wanted
make
to
sense.
make the planter bigger. Okay, I remember the evolution.
Yeah, yeah,
of-
so we did
okay,
make it
okay.
bigger and you can see it's
Okay.
really skinny in this one. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, that's what we asked. So thank you.
For the today's submittal.
And what was the last comment that was addressed? How about the primary, secondary, tertiary? I didn't understand who said that and what we were asking. Did you, Tip?
It will
I
address this
had
one,
this,
or comment number 3, if you're satisfied with 1 and 2, yeah.
Yeah, one and two.
3 is for architectural, so.
So number 3 relates to the carport. Number 3 relates to the carport. Could you go to page 19?
I think in this file, in file 2, I think it's page 2, actually.
That's it. So what we did was to restudy it and to make it more trellis-like with differentiating between the primary members, which are 6x12s, the secondary members, which are 4x12s, and the tertiary members, which are 2x3s. And so you can see them with their overhangs. The primary and secondary members have shaped ends to mirror the images of the shaped ends on the trellises on the other face of the garage.
Great.
Any more details?
No other
Anything?
changes since.
No
last
other
time.
changes? Okay, all right. Any other questions?
No, I thought they responded to everything with great diligence.
Okay, that's all we have. And thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
We've closed consent agenda. Okay, I would like to open the Montecito Board Architecture Review meeting for July 23rd. And the first item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have anyone?
Seeing no one rise in the hearing room. And for those of us joining online, if you'd like to speak for general public comment, raise your virtual hand and I'll call on you. No hands.
Okay. And agenda status report. Anything?
No changes today.
Okay. And then I'm going to go through the meeting minutes of July 9. And I see that Dave was absent and Stacy was absent. So between the four of us, Tom, any comments? Bill?
No.
Rob? Yeah, and I don't have anything else to add, so have a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. Sorry, make a motion to approve the minutes of July 9th.
Second by me. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Stay.
Thank you.
All right, so now we are on to staff update.
Nothing to report here. Kimberly?
Nothing for me either, thank you.
Okay, and then we have one item on the consent, and that's item number C1, 85, 87, 89 butterfly. Rob and we review it and we recommend for final approval as submitted. Want to make a motion?
What is the item number? I'm sorry.
85, 87, 89 butterfly.
Motion for final approval as submitted.
Second by me. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And members informational briefings. So we are missing one member today. Robert. Anything with anyone?
No.
Dave? No. Okay, I have nothing to report. So we are on to the standard agenda. And that's the Lotus Development Plan, 695 Ashley Road. And I see that the applicants are here. Your name for the record, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, board members. I'm Laurel Perez with SEP's Land Use Consulting, and I'm here with our design team.
Serena Edelson from Harrison Design.
And Kaylee Greb with Arcadia Studio.
Okay, so we had a very nice site visit this morning, and thank you all for accommodating us. And okay, so we are on the same page. This item is here for further conceptual for the modification to the master plan, and we are going to look at I believe 6 or 7 different projects, and we are going to focus on the site planning issues, the mass spoken scale, as this item will subject to our review today, and if everything's fine, we will need to make recommendation to the Montecito Planning Commission. So if you can think of begin to as we review the project and make some recommendation to the MPC, and then subsequently this project will return to MBOP for preliminary and final approval. And in the future, they will come back with the individual project, and then we can focus on the details, the colors, and so try to focus our comments on the mass spoken scale and the appropriateness of the project to the site. So what we like to do today is that I believe there's 6 or 7 components to your presentation. To help us, we like for you to go through one project at a time. The architecture, first the master planning, which we've seen, and the landscaping, the architecture, and then we would like to have the board to ask questions. And after that, then you can move on to the next one. And then when you finish with all seven, then we'll open public comments and we'll proceed with the meeting. So it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think you covered the planning basis for this, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to the design team. Thank you.
Okay. And I think the strategy for presenting this, I think we'll go, I'm going to attempt to go in the same order that we walked it so that our brains can keep it organized. So we'll begin with the Cold Springs Gate that we looked out on site. If we can go to L1.1, which is the second set.
File 3, I think.
File 3. So the pages I'm skipping over are the ones you reviewed last time. There have been some modifications, but it was like that we had to add the trash route and things like that from the incomplete letter. So we'll go mostly into the design. Yeah, so 1.1. Yep, there you go. Thank you. Perfect. And so as we described on site, the main goals are to improve, to minimize the stacking onto Cold Springs Road when the cars are waiting for the gates to open. I acknowledge that you requested that we show the cars. We will come back with that, or I can do a count on those and get back to the chair with that number on exactly how many cars can work. This is insetting the gate further into the property so that there's more room for a turnaround if someone's there in air or just needs to be able to circulate through there, more room for shuttle access, and then a left turn for emergency vehicles and general staff access to the backside of the property. We've created a on-site bypass for like a maintenance path for staff to not have to go through the double gates. So those gates aren't constantly opening and closing. And then a backdrop wall that has the same architectural details of the existing wall. It's just pushed back and kind of creates a backdrop to the whole roundabout. There'll be as design develops through the phases, there'll be a center mosaic medallion most likely and a decorative paving for that roundabout in the decel lane and the exit lane being asphalt tying into Cold Spring Road. We also are providing safer pedestrian access from Cold Spring, crossing the drive aisles and to the visitor kiosk, where currently they have to walk in the drive aisle. And also with that, adding a pedestrian gate through the main gateway. If you have any questions, we can go through the existing condition. Is that kind of overlaid blue and red diagram on the right? It just shows the light blue. It was the existing portion of pavement that is to remain, and the red is the portion to be removed, and the dark blue is where we're filling in, just so you can kind of see the overlay of new and old hardscape. I think with that, we can move on to the architectural elevations.
Yeah, so the next sheet we'll look at is just the elevations of the proposed gate. There's no change since the last time this board reviewed the design. As we saw on site early this morning, the gate there is a non-historic gate. It's a non-historic wall in that location. And so we're proposing a gate that's very similar in look, but actually more historically detailed ironwork, and then to meet the requirements of the fire and traffic width, as well as incorporating the pedestrian access gate adjacent to it. The proposed piers and walls are inspired by the original George Washington Smith drawings that you see on the sheet. And then the only addition to this sheet is the gate above the elevation number 4. And this is the proposed service gate designs. We call it the Ashley Road Gate. This is also proposed for the Ashley Road Gate, but on the other 2 locations on site where we're showing a gate, this is the design intent for kind of a more service-oriented gate.
Okay, are you done with component one?
Yes, if I'm not going to go into the detailed planting in each area, and if the landscape architects on the board have questions at the end, I'll just respond to them.
So,
There's
so let's back to the board for questions regarding the new roundabout. Can you go back to the site plan? Dave? David? Okay, let's start with Com. You have any question for this phase of the project? Okay, Bill?
Yeah, there where the gate sort of meets that back wall that you're adding, could that actually come into the uphill side of the pilaster instead of right in? Because what you've done is sort of removed any ability to have any buffer of green there at the curb, between the curb and the wall. You see where those pilasters are in that wall that curves up and around and hits right into the face? But it come around the other side of it just to give you a little room there for planting.
Sure. Yes. Sorry. Yeah, this is questions. Okay. I want to make sure I wasn't speaking out of turn. Yes, it is pretty tight in there. And so it's kind of a combination of trying to funnel everyone and creating that separation from the Italian garden and allowing for that access path. But I agree, wherever we can have greenery between flat work and vertical, we will.
Yeah, maybe it's just offsetting it on the pilasters.
Exactly. Yeah.
I
So
just
yeah, that's
was wondering if that was a possibility.
a good question.
The kiosk in that, is that where the kiosk is now?
That's
That's
existing
changing?
kiosk.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the driveway is still going to continue past it on both sides, or does it go onto one side?
It's a slight modification to the kiosk curb, just to allow, right now, the teardrop that the kiosk sits in is has like an awkward angle where someone can't double back if they were there incorrectly.
Oh,
And so it's just a very slight modification, and then allowing for that pedestrian crossing so they could talk to, if they walked into a tour, they can talk to the greeter and then cross safely with that crossing over.
and just looking at it, I'm sure you probably analyze it, but that turn as you're coming in off of Cold Springs and you're making the right turn to go into the gate there coming in, is that radius long enough? I mean, it's
Mhm.
like, if somebody's coming out the gate and you're going in, they're not going to be like bumping noses.
Yeah, the traffic engineers and civil engineers have looked at it. It's a tight space, so we've maxed it out, and they feel like it's much better than the condition right now that exists, and it can allow larger shuttles and buses. Also, the intention with that, instead of like having a tree or some other object in the center of the roundabout, is that buses and emergency vehicles can just drive right over it, so that they can get a better radius on it.
Yeah.
Also, we'll be doing some gentle striping on site to justify the cars right and left to the right side, because sometimes that causes queuing as well.
Okay, great. That's it. Thanks.
Rob?
I think in like to what Bill's saying, to some extent, I was trying to get a handle as to what was the limiting factor with that maintenance road above, and I guess there's the alley above. I see what that's kind of a fixed element.
Mm-hmm.
So where I'm going with it, and I know it's kind of a comment, but it relates to a question, is that can the roundabout be stretched out as opposed to, since you can't go up and down with it, can you get more function and stretch it out? And where I was going with it is where Bill's talking about the wall, I also thought that there needs to be more meaningful landscape at the back end of that. We've kind of stretched the entry out into the site, and the landscape kind of stops with the two Chilean palms. And it seems like more significant palms at the back end of that would kind of complete the thought of that entry experience, that it should be a little more robust. And I can see you're limited by room to accomplish that. So both the wall and adding meaningful landscape are limited by that maintenance road in the back and then the alley behind it. So with that said, if you stretched it out, looks like you have room to do that. Would you be able to kind of maybe get more landscaping back there, make maybe add, deal with the wall issue that Bill's mentioning? Is that feasible?
We'll take a look. I think it's the depth we need to get the bigger vehicles around. And so I don't know that I gain like page north-south depth if I make it wider, but I'm happy to study it.
I mean, with just
Yeah.
try with the turning radiuses and stuff,
Yeah.
see if they work. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay. That's my questions on the entry gates.
Stacy?
Yeah, so things I'm looking at too. What are you envisioning behind kind of the bypass road on the backside? You have a
Behind the bypass road
existing?
is the existing Italian LA, so it's the Abelia and the Italian cypress,
Okay,
which is a pretty good screen. It's hard to see through.
yeah,
the
and
access
it keeps the garden private from the road. How much space do you have in like the thinnest to the thickest part of that back planting area on the turnabout?
I don't have it exactly. I don't have a dimension on it right now, but I think I'm around like 2 to 3 feet at the skinny part, and then I get enough room to plant a tree, you know, where you can see it curves out at both ends. I think the added benefit, that access road can be a pervious material like granitecrete or something, and so we could potentially plant larger trees and then put the access road in after, so that we can get larger specimens in there as a nice backdrop.
Yeah, I mean, I see that as a possibility as well. Then I was looking at the gates and the gate designs. Can we look at the elevations and just looking at the original George Washington Smith versus the proposed, his elevations, everything has a much longer, thinner proportion to it than kind of the one that you have as you come up Sycamore, that those are the newer ones that they got a lot fatter than I think what was
Piers?
originally. Yeah, the piers,
Okay.
yeah. Did you explore kind of the longer, thinner proportions first? And is there? a
We
reason
did,
for
I
it
think
to be so fat?
proportionately to the width of the opening now, 22 feet, that felt a little bit more kind of appropriate proportionally as a whole composition, but we can certainly,
What's the
Visit it.
width on the,
I would have to
Um,
double check.
I think it's close to 22 feet, I think, because
no, not the opening, but the
Pier
width of it.
itself.
oh,
I don't know off the top of my head.
while you're asking other questions, I can scale it really quick.
I mean, we can come back to that as well. Do you have a height listed on there as well? for the
Yes,
pier?
the height is listed. If you could pan to the right,
Just
please,
so I
or
can
I
see.
can go actually to my sheet.
There we go.
So the pier, the very top of the pier is 10 feet.
Is there any reason we couldn't push it to 12?
I think we can push it to 12. I would have to add a case string to our application package for a minor conditional use permit, but this is a project that's going to the planning commission anyway.
Okay,
And if your board supported that direction and our team was okay with it, that would be helpful. You know, yeah.
I'm looking at it and I think just when I gauge it, just looking at your 10 foot, I think you're probably either 4 to 5 feet on the column width. Does that seem about right?
Have it in 3 seconds. 3.5.
3.5.
Oh, it's just 3.5.
Right
Okay.
at the edge
Yeah.
of the cap.
Okay, that's not as bad. All right, thank you.
Dave? Yeah, how are visitors going to know which way to enter the turnaround?
There will be some signage and directional arrows on the pavement would be my assumption right now. You're turning right, so yeah, the signage will be addressing it's good. This one is correcting some of the funniness that Lotus Line has with their entrances. If anyone's come in the Ashley Gate before, it used to be opposite, where you'd come in the second, or you didn't stay on the right.
Yeah.
So this will, I think it'll be more logical as you're driving up to it, and then we also can have signage.
Okay.
And from like a design architectural point of view, gate 6, the formal gate would be the open iron decorative gate, and then gate 7 would be the solid wood utilitarian design.
Once you're in the roundabout.
No, arriving, if I
Oh,
was driving
thank
up
you.
there, there's 2 driveways into the roundabout, and I was just curious how you, because of the confusion we saw there today, I just want to make sure that it's clear, so that you don't have that issue. But
Yeah.
so when you come in the future, it'd be good to resolve that. My other question is if there's pedestrians going up Cold Springs Road, can they use the pedestrian path that you've created to continue along the road and along across the driveways and make it across?
They could, but it doesn't go anywhere. We have asked, so the county has given us feedback. We initially were hoping for a pedestrian crossing there to be able to kind of continue where you come off Sycamore, come up that side and then cross it in close to the gate. It's challenging to create a mid-block safe crossing, we've been told. And so I'm not sure that they will use it for that because it's such a short section.
Okay, I'm just talking about people walking up the street, not crossing it, but having to walk across those two driveways, or it looks like you have a pedestrian path that follows the turnaround and
Yes.
goes down.
Yeah.
So the public could use that if they're just walking by Lotus Land too? Okay, just so we're not disrupting the public walking up the road, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. No, it will be, if anything, a safer condition for anyone walking up the road.
Right. Okay, thanks.
One point of clarification, the pilasters that we were talking about, increasing the height, they're actually located outside of the front yard setback. So they can go taller without any kind of minor conditional use permit.
Okay, David, can you go back to the site plan? So I think I asked this question last time. What is the diameter of the roundabout? Outside to outside?
Outside to outside is, yeah, it's about, I think it's about 60 actually.
50 feet? 60 feet. And what is the distance between when you come into the new entrance and you make a U to the gate? What's the distance from that to the gate between the road and the two roads? Is it like about 30 feet, like a U-turn to the gate? Yeah, please.
Just to make sure they know which one.
Yep, exactly.
There, 40 feet.
Okay, the question number 3 is that does the gate have to be at that location, or can the gate move to the right more to allow a room for one car striking, so without blocking the roundabout?
It potentially could. It just gets tighter and tighter until the driveway starts pulling away from the Italian garden. And so we kind of chose where we did have a little bit of planting buffer to land those pilasters, but we're happy to look at it. We're trying not to rebuild the entire curb and roadway drive aisle in there, but.
And then, if you move the gate to that location, which you completely remove from the front, you're approaching Cold Springs from Cold Spring Road. What are you planning to do for the wall behind the roundabout? Are you planning to put like, some beautiful Lotus Land landscape?
Yeah, yes.
And-
It'll be planted in the foreground and then it'll most likely have some sort of engraved panels in the wall as
And
well.
you have enough room between the roundabout and the wall to create something that simple but
Yeah.
tastefully done.
We have about like 3.5 to 4 feet. And so we have enough room to at least put some sculptural plantings in there. And the nice thing about the plant palette in that area is kind of individual specimen, architectural specimen type plantings. And so we'll be able to do something that really feels.
Yeah, I'm sure that you're doing all of this to improve the flow.
Mm-hmm.
And we were here this morning. We were there this morning. We didn't see car coming in, car coming out. And I'd like for you to perhaps, because I think this is a very important change to the entrance. My question is that I'm concerned about the scale of the whole thing. It seems like you try to squeeze a lot of things into a very small area, and I don't even know, if it works or not. You have car try to come in, and then you have cars try to come out. And if you never used this before, when you make a roundabout, you probably come out the same way you're coming in. If there's no cars, unless you put a sign saying "Do not enter here," and then my question had to do with how. I mean, the cars are big each day, like the one we saw this morning, an SUV. And when an SUV like that coming in, what does it do to your roundabout? Does it block everything? And so I'm not sure how can you show us that this really working or
Yeah.
not. And I was thinking about this, after the meeting, and maybe the next time you do some AI generated image and you can see how the car kind of flow around, if it works or not.
Yeah, I think it's pretty common for us on tight sites like that we do use auto turn or something similar where you can show the diagramming of the various sized cars. And we've the civil engineer, either civil or ATE, sent it through those, and so we can regenerate those
Yeah,
exhibits.
because it's almost seemed to me like this is a forced solution. And I'm not sure the forced solution would work or not. Tom is a civil engineer here on the board, right? You're both. So I'm just a question. We might want to see different options and see how you can improve it. I'm just have a little concern about it. Perhaps the next meeting. It's just a question, or is the roundabout is an appropriate solution for that or not? Because surely the roundabout to make it work, it had to be like 90 feet. When you do a lot of cars in and out, at 60 feet, it's very tight, extremely tight for what we had today. A big SUV, and if you have one or two coming in, you might block the whole and make it worse than it seems. So, just some question I have for you to consider.
Okay.
Okay.
I have some additional
Question?
questions, please. So on the pedestrian, was there any notion of the pedestrian kind of coming in on the left side as opposed to coming in along that new driveway? And then, so you're not having the pedestrian cross two driveways, of being able to come in on the right-hand side of the gate or somewhere there, where you create a pedestrian access along that new entry drive wing, and then you cut into the garden so you're not crossing two drives. Did you folks look at that?
Yes. So the challenge there, this is identifiably a very complex area, and if we send the way the cars queue, the heaviest queuing is from the kiosk back, and so to have pedestrians crossing that drive aisle anywhere in there is a little challenging because they would be going in between queued cars almost for sure. Like if it's a tour starting, and so the safest place for them to cross once they're on site was past the kiosk, because there's a one of the gate arms, so the kiosk attendant can allow a pedestrian to cross and then the next car to go, if that makes sense.
No, well, I guess I was asking, why couldn't you come into the garden to the right-hand side somewhere along the right, and then connect back to that pedestrian path? So you're coming in way over on the left, and then you're crossing two driveways with a pedestrian path. So my question is, why couldn't you have that part of the pedestrian path on the right-hand side, maybe come through that wall somewhere on the right-hand side, and then connect to, back to the pedestrian pathway that you're showing that goes all the way up to the kiosk?
Yeah, we can look at it. It took
Okay.
out a lot of the foreground planting.
Okay.
That was the main thing.
So, and then the other two questions, and it was regards to Stacy, that was kind of a big deal. Can we go back to the historic photo of that? Stacy brought up a point in regards to the height, the elevations, I'm sorry. I mean, if you look at the historic kind of design, it's really narrow, and then the columns are very tall. And I assume that was by design, and then basically it's gone where it's squatted down and spread out. And so I think the notion of making those columns taller, there's a lot of almost historical merit to it. So then the and the final question is on the wrought iron. I see a lot of beefier stock used with a lot of kind of traditional stuff done more recently. And then did you folks look at the wispiness, I guess, of the ironwork? And I'm just kind of wondering the thinking on that aspect of it.
That would be our intent for sure, is that the iron is real steel and not like a rolled iron or something. And so that the detailing is much more historically wispy and thin and not chunky.
Actually, so that's what was done then, was more wispy, was what was done before, historically? Usually
Typically, yes. Sometimes nowadays you'll see a much kind of a hollow stalk, and we always propose a solid stalk with square corners and actual raw iron attachments or rivets, so that it is as close as possible reflective of the historic. We will, once we get into more detail, certainly want to confirm what is required for the width that's 22 feet or, each panel. But the intent is that it's more closely related to the historic iron gate, which in this sheet that we're looking at now, the bottom left-hand corner is the actual George Washington Smith, I think Smith designed gate. And then the one on Sycamore Canyon. And then I think it's the image.
Actually, let's focus on that at the
Okay.
face.
Anyways, that's,
Right.
that's.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Let's move on to the next component.
Area. Okay, I think we'll go to the caretaker housing, which help Dave get to. Okay.
File 4, page 1.
All right, so we reviewed this on site and you saw the story poles. So to orient you, the ridge line of the story poles was the upper right-hand structure shown on the sheet. And then we were standing, well, we went all over, but the green garage that was there is approximately where those gates are shown. And that red line is a view triangle, so just so you can get yourselves oriented. So we looked at a lot of locations, as we mentioned on site, for siting the housing. This is replacing the existing caretaker's cottage in this corner of the property and pulling everything in out of the setbacks. They're modest sized cottages and up 6 units. And in the courtyard style, so that we can allow for the gathering space and any potential noise making happens more internal to the complex, and then with the small private patios outside, which we appreciate your comments about a potential sound buffer wall along Cold Springs to allow those spaces to be more habitable. The parking, just to orient you, that will most likely serve this space, although it's all going to be kind of staff parking back there, are the spaces to the upper right. And so a lot of the on-site circulation will flow there. The trash enclosure, not that you care too much, but it's page north. So it's very tucked away from the street, visible street views. This area, we really threaded the needle with trying to remove as few oaks as possible. There's a cedar that needs to be removed, and there will be palms that need to be transplanted. And then we have documented in the tree report that the arborist report that there will be a few trees to be mitigated for, but we've really gone to pretty great lengths to avoid the significant oaks. I think with that, I oriented you to the circulation on site, so I think we can go straight into the architecture and come back for questions.
Yeah, if we go to the next slide in this file, here's the inspiration imagery. Like we mentioned at the last design presentation, we did a number of charrettes with some of the Lotus Land team to think through the preferred type and orientation and layout of housing design. And the idea of the courtyard style cottage housing was very popular. And what we also think is very special is it alludes a little bit to the never built Reginald Johnson garage and living quarters that you see in the top center image and then the very center image here. We were looking to that as some inspiration, of course. And then similar on the left-hand side center image is the gardener's cottage that we saw today, the wonderful little George Washington Smith structure. And that very much was the spirit with which, especially for mass bulk scale and site layout, we're wanting to convey. If you'd go to the next slide, please. This is the design of the complex. As a reminder, the site slopes a little bit from page left to page right, downhill. So the intent to put the two-story structure furthest away from Cold Spring and also lower on the property. So it does kind of feel like this sweet, tucked away two-story structure. We also liked the idea of the kind of large courtyard and then adjacent smaller courtyards. I heard Stacy asking during the site visit about, who might live there, and the intent is it's, long-term staff housing to really benefit Lotus Land's retention of valuable staff members. And we can envision for sure that there might be, a family or a couple. And so to give each of those residents some privacy, some security, was a lot of the intent for the layout, and then certainly from Lotus Land's feedback as well. At our last design review meeting, we received really useful to us and we think absolutely right comments about some of the architectural charm. We're trying to thread the needle with wanting the proposed structures to not supersede architecturally the historic buildings on site, and knowing it's really the gardens that carry the most whimsy, and in many ways the architecture is just this subtle, lovely backdrop. But we do agree and thought it was really good comment to add a little bit more charm onto these structures. So you'll see we've proposed chimneys on the buildings. Each is a little bit different in the very kind of George Washington Smith eye, and wrought iron grills on a couple of the facades. That would be kind of the more public facing, if you will, which makes sense architecturally. And then on that two-story structure on elevation 5, which we can either zoom into or the subsequent sheets, we've also included the images at a larger scale. Perfect. We varied the facade. We had heard feedback that kind of the window and door placement was a little too stacked and conventional. And looking at that, we thought that this was a lovely way to kind of consider that as well. And we can go to the next images here. We'll just be able, the next couple of slides, we'll see the elevations in finer detail or at a greater scale, if you will.
All right. So back to the board, and as I mentioned before, let's focus on the mass book scale and the scale of the project, and some general comments about the design of the building, but we will have plenty of time to address those when they come back on the future date. So let's start with Dave.
Yeah, I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Stacy.
So the size of the units, what's the largest and smallest?
There are 6 units total. They're each around 730 gross square footage. The smallest is just a single bedroom unit, which is 404 square feet. Thanks, Laurel. And the rest are closer to 750, 730 square feet.
You're doing 3 bedrooms in 750 square feet.
On some of the units, yes.
And how does that relate to other units in Montecito in that area, size, bulk, and scale wise? Like, what is the average square footage typical home in the Cold Springs area? Have you guys done a study?
I haven't done a study for that specifically. We were looking to more cottage style housing, including the historic quarters on site, or inspiration from other kind of cottage style, staff style housing in Santa Barbara.
Yeah, I don't think there's any housing, employees housing in Montecito, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
no, not employee housing, but just general single-family homes in Montecito. What is the range in size? Is there anything that tiny?
Yeah, we could certainly look into them. I know there are some. For example, I'm actually a docent at the Casa del Herrero as well, and they have a few separate on-site housing that are within this range as well.
That,
Yeah.
yes, I mean ADUs for sure, but those are more um considered like rental, not long-term living. I just wonder, like, how does this fit into the overall scheme of Montecito, size, bulk, scale wise, just in relative to other homes?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a question.
Definitely, this is, as you mentioned, employees housing, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only other one that we've been reviewing was the one for Caruso,
How big were those?
and they were about 600 square feet. And I don't think we have anything approved, anything like that. Now, ADU is not the same thing, and cottage is not the same thing. And so
Mhm.
this is mainly for employees housing for.
Long-term, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mr. Chair, board members, that's exactly right. I think you're going to start to see more employee housing, hopefully. That's our goal as land use planners. And they're naturally going to be smaller than your traditional, because there is a
Yeah, no,
cost issue here. Yeah.
I come from experience on this. My mother grew up in what was considered employee housing, I guess, on Ortega Street.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather was the manager of the Coca-Cola bottling plant, but they lived in Victorians that were more, I would say, on scale from 1,800 to 2,500 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
So
Not today.
I know,
Yeah.
exactly.
I will add as well, for the sake of clarity, what we understand from Lotus Land is it's not that all of these are intended to be lived in by families forever.
Yeah.
Perhaps one of them is a artist in residence or a writer, et cetera.
But let's
There's
okay, let's move
flexibility.
on
Yeah,
to
just size, book,
yeah.
scale, yeah,
Um,
definitely.
Rob, question?
Just one quick question. Where, could I see the plan view? With it was the one that had landscaping, that one. Could you just scroll into the courtyard part of it? Yeah, right there. So this is a very minor question. So I just noticed that you had like the very formal layout in the courtyard of the six plant trees, whatever they are on the left, and on the right you have five. And then why did you change that one? It just caught
It's an
my-
existing palm and we can try to transplant it. It was just,
it just struck me. I mean,
yeah. Well, you
I
know
just
why
was
the
wondering.
thinking
Okay,
of keeping it was,
you.
because that's a 2-story elevation. So we were leaving the tall tree.
Um,
I
you-
didn't want to take time on it, but I did want to mention for the employee housing, this is meant to be gardeners, caretakers on property, not any and all employees. We prioritize people who are there for property caretaking. And right now, our workforce and historically, they tend to be single people who are recently out of school, kind of younger, early career folks. And our longest term employee is a 47-year employee who was hired by Ganawalska. But again, single. And, I think we run the risk of overbuilding potentially too. So just to talk about the inhabitants.
Bill?
Yeah, I see a combination of hips and gables, and I can't remember if, are there hip roofs on some of the other buildings, like the main residence?
Yes, the main residence is hipped with actually a flat top. And our precedent as well, the Reginald Johnson combines both hipped and gabled roofs
They did. In the same structure typically?
in the same complex, correct?
Same complex, like for instance, that upper elevation 2 there on the right, you have a gable with a hip. Is there a reason why you couldn't do gables and gables? And that particular building too, because it's 2-story, you end up lengthening that wall on the lower floor. You could shift that lower bedroom over a couple of feet and maybe get a break in that wall so it wasn't as long. Maybe there's some things that you thought about doing, or is it doable to do that?
To change that 2-story structure to a hip structure?
No, shifting things over. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, I see. We could
yeah,
study that.
details of massings, in other words. That's all doable.
Yeah.
Okay,
Uh,
wait, just a second, let me see. And the setback off of Cold Springs Road, you're right at it, are you right at I see two dashed lines there. I don't know what the two dashed lines are representing. Looks like the building's on the one line and then maybe your outdoor areas
Yeah.
are on the second line.
One is a 20-foot setback from the right of way and one is the 50-foot setback from the center line. We're just showing both, so we're supposed to take the greater. But we have I believe the courtyards are allowed to be in that.
In that
It's a
setback
low
area,
pony
and
wall.
that's quite a bit of buffer, although it looks like you have a path that leads to the street there.
It's
Possibility.
there's yeah, like it just a little bit of a connection outside the structure. It's mostly for fire, like that you have to have a footpath around the outside of the structures. But for the most part, we're just adding to the screening vegetation on the outside and then any more horticultural decorative plantings on the inside.
So there would be a gate though or something there if you had to go outside beyond that, right?
There will be a gate through the
So are you doing like, I noticed on the backside, you chain link and you had barbed wire and it was kind of in a state of disrepair a little bit. Is that the plan for
The chain link will most likely remain because they need it for security purposes. Of course, construction of this would demolish the existing that's there, and so it would most likely get replaced. And then with the intent that the vegetation fully overtakes it over time with the planting spacing.
Okay, great. Thanks. That's it.
I noticed when looking at the story poles that the second floor story had a large oak kind of towering over it. Do I see that on the plan here? Or is that tree being removed?
There was a palm that was kind of in it. That one will have to get transplanted. And then the oak, I believe we probably don't have the exact canopy size shown, but believe all the oaks are shown. Let me look at the tree report really quick to see if there's a cedar that gets removed in that front unit. There's no large oaks that come out for that two-story element. There's a very large oak that's the green that's in between the two structures and north, like centered on the two northern structure, page north structures. Yeah, that one is a very large oak, and that dictated a lot of the spacing of the structures. And then there's some smaller oaks that are close in the two-story structure that have to get mitigated for, but it's not the giant ones.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so how many units is it?
6 units.
Huh?
6 units.
Oh, only 6 units. And you said between 700 square feet and
404.
1,200?
404 is the smallest unit.
400 to 700 square feet.
Correct.
And does this project comply to the state housing? Like, like you have 5 hearing max and
Mr. Chair, board members, the answer at the moment is no, it doesn't comply. The state housing laws that you're speaking about are typically applied to residential developments. In this case, we have an institution that is proposing employee housing, doing the right thing, but unfortunately, because the employee housing is such a small percentage of the overall proposed development and change, that it doesn't meet the thresholds of being at least 2/3 the amount of the project square footage. So we don't get to take advantage of some of the state laws that are.
so how many units you had to propose to meet the state law?
It's a square footage
Yeah, square footage.
calculation. Oh, boy, I don't know if Adam's here, but
12 to
it
18.
was significant, yeah.
And how many employees does Lotus Land have at all time?
So 37 full-time equivalent employees. at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, because we saw a lot of cars today when we come into the employees parking
Mr.
lot.
Chair, what you were seeing were people arriving for their 9:15 a.m. tour.
Oh,
So,
I'm talking about the back end.
oh, on the back end. Oh, okay. So staff members,
Yeah.
volunteers, docents, yes.
So my question is, would you consider to adding more employees housing?
Mr. Chair, board
Because
members,
it
it's,
seemed to
it's
be
a
like-
matter of probably economics. I mean, the fact that Lotus Land is taking this leap and trying to do more for their employees
Yeah.
and employee retention.
It's just a question because it seemed like, 6 is not a lot
Yeah,
compared to how many employees you have. And since you have, a lot of great, so much land and so secluded,
yeah.
just a question that for to be considered, maybe, why not 12,
Mm-hmm.
for example? Just a question.
Okay. Yeah. At the moment, this is, what we're proposing and
Okay, and then my second question had to do with the parking for the housing. Are those the 6, 7 spots behind the unit?
Mr. Chair, board members, those are dedicated for the caretaker housing, those 7 parking spaces there, but there's also some spillover that would be available in the employee.
So where would the 6 lucky people park?
Most likely along that first strip right there. It's kind of the natural progression of how that parking area works right now is that most of the admin staff, and Rebecca, please chime in if I'm misrepresenting this, but a lot of the admin staff, docents, and volunteers park in the larger staff parking lot, and a lot of the gardeners tend to park closer to this caretaker housing. And so it would be a similar circulation pattern where the garden staff would be parking kind of in the shaded areas there. And then we'd have the larger.
But you need to provide parking for the employees. For the housing, you have to provide, right?
Yes, that's correct. And there's actually 8 parking spaces there for the
And will be protected outdoors or?
It's open. It's unprotected.
Uncovered.
Covered, yeah.
Okay,
And you can see it there. There's 8 spaces.
Would you consider maybe protected because you park right in a lot of trees and things? I'm just for people to live out, long term.
Consider some sort of carport.
Yeah, something nice, Okay, so my last question, this will probably carry on to the remaining project. I probably want to talk to the design team. I mean, what years was Lotus Land, the main residence were built in what, the 40s?
No, it was much sooner than that. Give me one sec. It also may be on the cover page. Oh, Anthony, the pro.
1918 was the original Johnson main house.
Okay, so here's my question. So, I mean, as you walk, you go through Lotus and you definitely see that it represents an era. It was built in the 18, like, the Moody sister. And my question for you you don't have to answer now, but maybe the next meeting is that now you're adding a lot of things to it, like the employees housing right in front. Would you consider changing the architectural style? Not completely change it like, when they added to the Louvre, they add the pyramid to make it, or, I mean, because I'm looking at things now, you build employees housing, and in the past, it's very charming when you do a simple building. Now you don't do it properly, it look like a cheap tract home. And my concern is that would you, or the board look at the idea, or perhaps now we do so many different projects, we need to embrace the Spanish, architectural vernacular, but we need to bring it up to make it, it should be beautiful, but doesn't have to be exactly the same as what was built in the 20s. So that's a question.
So I guess, great. Thanks for the question. So our approach with it has been a couple of key things. Is one is we definitely, there will be, especially in certain subtle things, a noticeable difference between these designs and actual designs from the 19 teens and 20s, and in terms of everything from how there isn't a servant and a served in these cases. There's no back of house. and the way in which they lay out is much more of a modern living condition. But in terms of language and style, our approach was that while we want to work with the language of Reginald Johnson and George Washington Smith, we still want to do it in deference slightly to them. So all of our detailing and all of our designs, while they may be inspired by a design that was never built by Reginald Johnson or something that was built by George Washington Smith or other, we want to be inspired by it. But we also want to, as you walk around the site, notice those buildings a little bit, very subtly, a little bit nicer, a little bit more. I don't think we'll have hand-as carved, rafter tails for our porches like there are in the gardener's cottage. But at the same time, we want it to be strongly relating to it, and Lotus Land is supportive of that sort of language design choice as we're going forward. So the idea would be that these would continue to play a nice background role to the garden and even to the other buildings, giving deference to the masters from 100 years ago. So that's sort of our general design direction. Will our windows and doors be single pane wood windows and doors? No, they won't. They will be modern. They will be probably clad with wood clad, wood aluminum clad. So there will be subtle differences. I guarantee you they're not going to look like a cheap track home. And they will be very much everything from weep screeds hidden and other things that really continue that great tradition that Lotus Land has in its architecture, but done in a modern way, and in a modern way of living that works with both the staff that will be working there and living there, as well as sort of continue the charm that the site has, and so that there's more of a continuation as opposed to striking a difference. So that was sort of our general design.
Okay, so yeah, we're not going to focus on the details now.
Sure.
We're not. I just want to bring it up because the whole tour today was looking at the historical context of all the buildings, and we were looking at the beautiful details, the rafter tails, and everything else. And now, obviously, you say you don't do that anymore because it probably costs too much money to carve all the rafters out. So in a way, begin to dumb down. But it's just a chance, just a question. Maybe does it have to be just
Sure, and I think there is as we go through are able to present fully each of the buildings in the detailing. There actually has been a huge amount of thought and trying different things as our approach along the way. Like even the number that it was asked, we looked at doing one actually that was 2 to 3 stories and maxing out and all those things. But really, for Lotus Land, for where their vision is really going for the property, as well as what they think that they can actually build as a maxed out version, this is what is sort of coming for you.
This is the mass spoken scale hearing. So if you decided after today's meeting that you feel that you should have more units or whatever that is, you should embrace it. That's
great.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
One more question about this particular area. Did you do an elevation of the solar panel structure yet? Do you have any
It's
info?
not detailed yet. We did a just massing simulation for the historical report to make sure that it wasn't super visible from the public right away, and it wasn't. And so that I think is included in the report now. The detailing of the solar structure is not, it's
Nothing yet.
Conceptual at this point. Yeah. But knowing that we want it to be a very light touch as possible. Yeah. As light a touch as possible.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Move on to the next component.
We'll go on to the staff offices, which I can find
That's going to be file
the 7.
7. Thank you.
All right. And this one, the siting of it is pretty straightforward. It's functionally makes a lot of sense to have the offices in close proximity to the main residence, which is the main area for the office administrative staff. We presented this a bit on site, and so I think I'll mostly defer to the architects on this.
Yeah, I think we can go. Let's go to the next slide, please. Thank you. We got to see the courtyard today. As you can see, it's very much used just for back of house for staff kind of break. And as we pointed out when we were on site, there was actually, can we pan down to the plan first? There was a trellis that was there historically that connected the old staff dormitory to the main residence. And so part of this project is proposing bringing that pergola back and then setting back the little L-shaped office structure with a covered walk in front of it. And then the alignments to the gates on either side of this courtyard as a design choice. The inspiration for this is the George Washington Smith stables that we saw today. If we pan up, we can see those in elevation. Trying to think through, I feel it's valuable to think through what could a structure that exists in this area have been and how that might have been adapted to time. And so to take inspiration from the stables as a way where each staff person gets their own office with windows and a door or a Dutch door, I think is a really lovely way to kind of figure out a building that is appropriate in size and scale in this courtyard.
Thank you. Bill?
Could you go back to the site plan real quick, David? I think it's one or two sheets back. Had you thought about the idea, is it possible, instead of doing the dog leg on that building, because you're removing that shed there, could it just be a straight rectangle with a covered porch? Had you thought about that? Is that, or is there something in the way? Is there a setback to building?
There is
So
a
that doesn't,
basement access to the main house that's in that area. We could certainly look at it and study. We, on this as well, looked at a number of different ways to kind of orient or lay out this courtyard and liked the L-shaped structure as creating a smaller court to the north that could be shaded and where staff could take lunches, et cetera.
it just felt like that leg was kind of cutting right into the middle of the courtyard that's there. So I just thought maybe if you had the square footage and you could bring that around, maybe there's a way to.
Part of it too, from a like concept design, was thinking through the visitor, or excuse me, the volunteer check-in, and actually wanting something that's right there where volunteers who may not know where they're going to stumble their way into the office where they're meant to be.
Okay, that was it. Thanks.
Thanks.
That's it?
That's it.
Oh,
Mhm.
what a surprise. You guys gave up already? Dave,
All right, what was the next?
question? Oh, you don't have any?
All right, we'll move on to the orchard.
Okay, move on to the next component.
Orchard Pavilion is file 5.
See, it's getting easier and easier by the minute.
Yeah, you asked about the hard ones at the beginning.
We're wearing you down.
Yeah. This is the strategy. You out. Okay, and by now you're pretty familiar with the Orchard Pavilion and its siting. This further illustrates, though, so the access drive, like page south of the building, is already a pretty cleared out area that's currently used for staff as access, but it's just mulched right now. And so it was a good opportunity to clean up that where the driveways intersect on the left, to have a 90-degree turn instead of this double back condition that does cause some issues on site, and square it all up, and then we can reorganize the orchard a bit. It's a great opportunity for us to be able to have deliveries in the back that don't affect anything with on the on-tour experience. And yeah, take it from there with the architecture.
Right. There were some questions on site about kind of the relationship to the drive behind. Kind of behind the structure is meant very much to be back of house, and wanting to pull the structure as far back as possible from the existing Olive Alley, which we think is so special, and align the the architecture align the arcade to the olive alley that's there. There was some wonderful feedback we got on this structure in particular about kind of Ganowalska, madam, and her spirit as well. And this was always in our mind, but we are very delighted to kind of think through those details as well, thanks to the board's comments. And if we can go to the next couple of slides. Our wonderful inspiration from the George Washington Smith Pavilion on site. It's plaster work, it's courtyard that's separating itself from the main residence, the tile work, etc. And then if we scroll down to the proposed project elevations. Yeah, the ironwork at the pavilion courtyard up above those inspiration imagery is the original George Washington Smith ironwork. We were talking with Bill earlier today that the drawings are at UCSB in full scale. They're amazing if you haven't had an opportunity to see them. It's amazing, amazing drawings. And so we're taking inspiration from this, but again, not trying to copycat, but do something that's appropriate for Lotus Land and its needs. So if we scroll to the next page, we can see the elevations. And here, I had an opportunity actually in this year to travel to Madame's Opera House in Paris at the Champs-Élysées, and took a lot of inspiration photos there. And so if we scroll to the next page with the elevations, we really like that idea of being inspired and imbuing a little bit of Madame into this structure. I think that's appropriate. And so the plaster grills that flank the doorways are inspired by grills at the Theater Champs-Élysées in Paris. And then also loved the idea of, ironwork and light fixtures and tile work inspired by Cartier's custom designs for Madame. And we think there is a wonderful opportunity in this structure, certainly at a detail level, to really nod to Ghana and her amazing history.
And can you zoom into the detail on the bottom right of all of those details there? Because I think that
under the
on the right-hand side of the page, mid page. There we go. Just to see the details of it that you're talking about.
The actual image.
On
the precedent imagery, and just zooming into those a little bit more if we can. So again, this is all things we have been always part of the spirit of this project and we've been thinking through. I know we're here just at concept level, but wanted to address the board comments that we very much are so excited and inspired by Madame and her legacy and wanting that to spirit to also be part woven into the architecture of this building. And then we can, I think, look at the elevations and really the mass, bulk, and scale, I think, as it relates to our review today. Like we said, the intent is to build hopefully the restroom structure first, years before the rest, because that's such an critical need. There's only a minor change to that architecturally. We brought the plate down a little bit. We felt that it was more appropriate to kind of step the restroom plate down from the adjacent structure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Daisy?
A big question on the site was, why do we have to keep all of the olive trees, especially when they're on the axes to the entrance to this pavilion? And looking on either side, so the three best olive trees happen to be on the axes to the pavilion, but adjacent, each of those, you have a lot of olive trees in decline that look like they're about ready to remove themselves from the LA. Why couldn't we transplant the really pretty ones to the side and then really give this building what it needs? Is there anything that would hold you from doing that? Because as vegetation ages out, it does die over time. Trees don't last forever. Was that ever considered?
It has been considered. That view corridor, that LA is part of like the historic report, and so the efforts so far have been to prove that we aren't changing that view corridor. Also, that being said, this pavilion is probably far into the future, and if as the olives continue to decline, those decisions will have to be made. But I think it's it's going to be a little bit of an uphill challenge to not replace those trees in the same cadence that they are because of the historic nature of that LA. We can, of course, look into it, and I would prefer that those trees weren't dead on with the structure, but the cadence is so strong down that LA that we'll just have to
From
balance.
the design point of view, we actually love the existing Olive LA and really loved this. What felt like a valuable way, especially at Lotus Land, to have the structure be deferential to the existing gardens, especially the historic portion of the existing gardens. And by nature of that existing, the four arches, the kind of four arcade, means that we have a center placed column, which is kind of a nod to George Washington Smith's pavilion that we saw. So this was all part of like, we kind of love this as our inspiration and our siting, and a wonderful way to have this structure marry itself into the existing gardens and not intend to change the feeling of the garden in that area.
That's my question.
Thank you. Rob? Maybe this was the spot that I mentioned was at the orchard was the was the mountain view. So I guess I'm just as you're working on this master plan, maybe there's like 2, 3, or 4 really areas where there's just magnificent mountain views, and I think might be worth either identifying them on your graphics, but also maybe it's an opportunity to have some kind of a sitting or something spot that sometimes to reinforce that view. And I don't even know, and maybe it won't hold up through the years. As you know, views kind of go away as vegetation grows. But anyways, I just saw it as an opportunity that you might explore and take advantage of.
Dave?
No questions on this one.
Tom?
What was your thought process on the small building having overhangs and the large building having no rafter tails? It almost seems like that should be reversed, where the large pavilion would have an opportunity to have some decorative exposed, maybe copy some of the other rafter tails from the garage or something like that.
We can certainly study that. I think the way that we were looking at it is a lot of if I recall, the main residence is fairly simple. It actually has more of a large cornice versus exposed rafter tails, whereas some of the secondary structures on site, were lower and had eaves. And so it was kind of looking to that as inspiration. But I understand the point you're making, and we can certainly examine it as well, especially with us having the loggia. It has a kind of covered loggia in front, or I guess beyond the arcade, that from that point of view too, we just kind of felt that the massing made sense to have a cornice and the loggia giving the depth at that main facade.
That's the only question.
Thank you.
Yeah, the finish, of course, you're going to try and match with the existing structures. The color, we see a lot of pink out there, and that historically was that the color that she had on the buildings.
It is. I actually read a letter when I was going through some of the archives before Madam's time. There was an existing structure on site, and them talking about building this new kind of pinker structure. We're doing some work with Lotus Land to do some scrapings to figure out what the actual original color is. There was a comment as well on our previous design review about maybe the caretaker housing doesn't need to also be matchy pink. That was something we had in mind, and so you'll notice in the material legend that it's actually a much more subdued kind of nod to pink, whereas the rest of the structures are intended to be more of a match to the existing.
Are there also any structures on site that are like stone, like a stone house or anything like that?
No, they're not.
All right.
Just a well.
Yeah.
Stone well.
Yeah. And everything else in the landscape is stone. All right, thank you.
Right.
And just a quick question. How, you said the building is 11 feet high, the walls?
The plate on this, let's see. That's correct. The plate height is about 11 feet 2 inches.
So the interior, what are you aiming to push for the interior? 10, 11 feet for the
For the
pavilion?
largest space, that's right.
Around that?
Yeah.
And how many people do they sit? What's the size of that room?
Counted because Stacy asked the question when we were on site. It's about 100.
100?
Correct. And you can see that in the floor plan laying out for kind of lecture seating.
So it's about 100. What is the proportion of that room?
Do you have your iPad here?
Dimension, it would just take me a second.
We did play a lot with that as well. Again, we want the covered loggia as part of kind of the transition into the space and a comfortable kind of lecture or classroom area. And so we did kind of study the proportion a lot and not wanting it to feel too oblong.
So what the size you have now, like 40 by 50 feet?
Kaylee's going to take the measurement in 1 second for us.
You know what your doorway dimension is? Yeah. It's okay. Yes. I mean, educate me.
We can certainly also come back to you with the specific dimensions too.
All right. Move on to
Sorry, it's 50. This is, estimate 50 by 33 approximately.
50 by 30.
Yeah, a little over 30 for the volume of the gathering room. And then
Yeah, you guys designed the building, I'm sure you know the size. Okay, number 5, next component.
We'll go to the horticulture complex.
That's going to be file
6.
Solarium. The green.
Yeah. Yeah, the greenhouse. So I realized I didn't give much backstory on the siting of this on site. It may seem like a given because it's an existing greenhouse is there, but we actually did study quite a few locations for this because there has been different interest in like whether it should go in the back 40 or if it should stay here or if there are other locations, mostly because of the access being down that road. Studying all of those things, this location allows for, it's actually a decent sized space. It allows for all of the programming that staff requests and the things that the connectivity to the garden that they need. It also, the back 40 really needs to stay, what we call the back 40, the part that's the overflow parking, needs to stay flexible for a lot of the sustainable horticulture practices that they do with the mulch piles and things like that. And so this is a nice consolidated area that can really focus on the plant curation and propagation. So that's how we landed on this spot. And it's really a reorganization of this space. We started with talking with Lotus Land staff about what they needed as described on site. We've located a head house so that it doesn't block any of the solar gain of the greenhouse structure to the north of the greenhouse. Then there's the proposed new greenhouse approximately in the same footprint of the current one. Then I'll just keep heading to the right. There's a trellis there that is really a gathering space for staff, for lunch space, but also we've visited some other horticulture and agriculture, like regenerative farms and things, and they often have like an area that is for plant propagation that also happens to be the staff hangout, and it seems so quintessential for Lotus Land to have that sort of flexible space. And then connecting to there is the offices and staff restrooms that could be secondarily used on like an emergency on tours, but mainly for staff. And then the kind of everything along the bottom edge are shade houses, and the number of those is calculated by what staff has said that they need. There's some healing in areas for cacti and succulent that can't be up on the tables. We have the sunbeds north of that gathering trellis, and a replacement for the existing hoop house that borders the backside of the cycad garden that they're currently building a more robust vegetative buffer between the two. And so that'll be grown in before this development were to happen. There's also a plumbing shed that's green, if anyone remembers seeing it to the north where the head house location is right now. That of a form of that would get relocated to next to the hoop house. It's for all the irrigation and stuff. So it's really an exercise in consolidating all the functions that curation and garden staff need so that they're not schlepping things all over the garden.
And with that, we can take a look at the architecture and elevations. This is one too. There was, well, we'll look at the offices first. So we had the opportunity to meet with Anna and Paul. Anna was in the Lotus Pond today as we walked past. And so this would be the offices for Anna and Paul. They have specific asks for library space. And then, like Kaylee mentioned, the open trellises in front of the office as breakout space or potting space. It was by request that they have flat roofs so that there could be solar incorporated on the structure, which makes sense. This is kind of similar to the dorm that we see adjacent to the main house, with just a simple flat roof, and then a restroom as well. That's separately accessible, especially if hands are dirty or things like that. This horticulture complex was a wonderful learning opportunity for us as well, of the very specific needs of some of the best horticulturists in our community, and making sure that we're really meeting their asks. We see that certainly for the greenhouse, the next couple of slides. So we heard the board's comments about considering, other types of greenhouses, iron inspiration or curving glass today. And we studied those too. We were like, how great would it be if we have this beautiful conservatory? And Anna and Paul really asked us to make sure we consider that it's a functional, simplistic greenhouse meeting the specific requirements that they have, and not a decorative iron conservatory, because that's not what they're wanting. And then simultaneously too, that this is a nonprofit, and we're not doing a decorative conservatory for a garden. This is their working greenhouse that they need to be sustainable for years into the future. But can we scroll up one slide? Actually, one additional slide. We really did appreciate Tom's comments about the head house in particular, and is there a way to make it special and charming? Thank you so much also for the inspiration that you shared with us today, and we'll consider that as well. We did some of that research. And simultaneously, we stumbled across some of the original Reginald Johnson drawings for the main house. I don't know if everyone's aware, but if we can scroll similarly into those small inspiration images underneath the material palette, there was initially a Churrigueresque cast stone surround at the main house door that at one point was scraped off. We don't know exactly what era that happened, but you can see the decorative Churrigueresque surround at the existing main house in the historic photos. The Reginald Johnson also had decorative surrounds around some of the upstairs doors. I don't know that those were ever built, but we thought that was actually a lovely inspiration to do something, to add something special from Lotus Land's property. And so we're proposing on the head house, this is new to this design review board, if we pan to the left, cast stone or plaster surround around the door to the head house as a way to just elevate it a little bit, have it feel special, and again, a nod to some of the history of Lotus Land.
I realized I skipped over a little bit of the circulation on here, so we did need to fit the fire hammerhead, but reconfiguring this space is allowing us to several of the mitigation oaks and other trees that we need to that we would like to reforest this area. We have some larger planting areas in this configuration, so we're able to add, I think, 4 to 5 new oaks, and then an additional buffer screening, because part of I think I mentioned it on the last hearing, but not this. But part of Lotus Land's long-term plan. A part of their sustainable horticulture is to have these habitat and insectary buffers surrounding the garden. And so this is an area that we get a lot more depth to be able to achieve some of that goal for them.
Good, thank you. Rob? Question? No, that's one more. Just a question. Stacy, question?
So will the greenhouse be all glass or will it be plexi?
Our goal is all glass, but again, it's going to be a navigation, and we'll certainly obviously come back to this board once we're at the kind of specific design detailing, but a navigation with the horticulture team and also what's realistically, part of Lotus Land's budget.
And then how much parking do we have in this area? Because it seems like an area that you're definitely, I mean, fire access, but also 2 trucks, loads and things as well.
Yeah, and that's it.
Navigating that.
The Fire Hammerhead has the double benefit of allowing for all the truck turnarounds. That's kind of central. And then we've organized it to have 5 formal parking spaces, 3 cart spaces, because a lot of Lotus Land staff uses the carts all day and gets down here with those. And then I think I have 3 more parking spaces over by the plumbing shed, which could be cart or parking. And that would probably be for like if someone's parking there for the whole day. So yeah, we broke it up to allow for the various uses and also maximize the.
And now is Lotus Land with this kind of elevated design that you've come back with now starting to consider maybe putting this on the tour as trustworthy? I mean, I find it completely interesting. I think most people visiting the garden would as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I understand that there are horticultural groups that specifically, of course, come to Lotus Land, and they would certainly be part of a tour that would come through the horticultural complex. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Lotus Land's really been developing like a robust educational programming too. And so I foresee that being the kind of workshop space too. That's why the flexibility of the shade structures and restrooms being there.
Okay. No, those are good. Thank you.
Dave? Oh,
No question.
you did ready. Thanks. Bill?
Yeah, does the horticultural building need to have access all the way around it too? Is that kind of critical function or?
Yeah, the loop
go
is
into the
inherent in
ends?
what they need. Yeah.
Go into you don't come into it, in or out of it.
No, but having the paving loop all the way around, like if they had what they want, it would be just an asphalt loop, like as low maintenance as possible, because they have so much to care for on tour gardens. But the loop it does seem like a lot of pavement, but this is like a very heavily used area that is like essential to keeping the rest of the garden.
I mean, I think I'm leaning toward what Stacy was alleging too, and from the beginning, I've been saying, if it's just even kind of nice as a building structure, it'd be really nice to sort of celebrate it more.
Yeah.
And not push it too far back. And is that the right spot for you? Obviously, it functions real well there. If it was on the outskirts of it and you flip the shade from the horticulture building, would that be better? Then you could have a better connection. If in case you found a really cool material, glass and steel, and it really ended up being something really cool, is that the best spot for it?
I don't know if the rendering is in this package, but the view as you come down,
I think in
the way a public tour would see, would observe this space, would be standing there in the existing drive. And so where the like part that can be customized of the greenhouse is the part that is on display. It looks like those shade houses are front and center, but they're actually tucked into existing vegetation, kind of in a more forested
So
area.
this would be a better spot, as you have shown
Yeah,
it.
this shows off the best parts of the architecture.
Celebrate it.
Except for the head house you can't see, but the rest of it. Yeah.
All right. That's it. Thanks.
Question back to the site plan, you had white squares, it looked like on the roofs of the head house and one other structure. Are those solar panels?
Correct.
Wouldn't the height of the greenhouse shade out the head house then?
We have wondered about that, but they'd like us to maximize it as much as physically possible on the head house.
And just when a solar panel gets shade, it goes production to 0 for that panel. So it's not the best, maybe. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so since you are here for the master plan approval modification, do you have the scale for the greenhouse? Like how tall the building is, and do you have, yeah, what is it based on your
Correct. Those are
drawings?
noted on the elevations. The overall height is 20 feet at the ridge.
It's so do you have a size, the scale, and the location of the building?
Mhm.
So 20 feet to the max.
Correct.
Do you have any nice or interesting inspirational images? Maybe next meeting?
We certainly can. Like we said before, we looked a lot into beautiful
Yeah.
historic conservatories and greenhouses, at public parks and things. And the Lotus Land horticulture team asked us to reconsider really and to be very explicit to their specific footprint, their specific height requirements and needs. And the footprint is based very specifically on their current use.
All right.
And as we come forward, we will be, this is probably going to be a customized, manufacturing thing as well. And so that'll be part of the next thing. But we didn't want to come in with the most beautiful thing at the beginning, and then you love it, and then we come back once we get the budget and be like, this is
Because to me, this could be the most beautiful element of the project.
okay.
And because of that, it's a big building.
Mhm.
It's really a big building. Would be a most significant building in terms of the use, because that's what Lotus Land is all about. So I thought that maybe, just something to consider. All right. Next, now you have what, a bathroom, right? And a
Yeah, just restrooms
outhouse.
and storage, which we can flip quickly. Oh, and the SciCAD structure, which if we can do the SciCAD structure quickly. Where's that?
That's file 7, page 9. Thanks for your patience all as we march through all of these.
Giant package. Page 9. I think I already explained on site the reason for the siting there, and so
Well,
we
that's
just have the
right.
pavilion there for scale,
Pavilion.
similar.
Yeah, and there were some questions as it related to the SciCAD structure and the garden shop storage about if they really needed an approval based on the square footage and footprint, and they do both. They're just above the threshold, which is why we've included them with this.
And then move on to maybe the bathroom.
Yeah.
We can.
Rooms, which.
So that's the next
next
slide.
Next page.
There's no change since was previously shown to the MBAR. Last we presented, we heard favorable comments that this very much was evoking the spirit of Lotus Land, and we actually utilized the feedback from MBAR, especially on the rendering on the next page, the garden restroom perspective, in elevating some of the other areas that you've seen so far.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the storage structure is very nestled by the visitor center. We can to that quickly. Let's see, file 7, page 6.
All right, Tom, any question for those two components?
Yeah, what was the height of the columns on the shade structure in the SciCAD garden?
I think they're 8 and change. The overall height of the structure is 11 feet 4 inches. They might be closer to 9. The intent is to, evoke that primitive hut and utilize kind of raw wood columns and exposed joinery.
Thank you.
Bill.
So question on that roof material there, I think you talked about something that you had somewhere on the site. Obviously, a mission tile won't work on that style, but the Japanese garden, you had some.
That's right. The Japanese garden is a wood shake. And so for this structure too, like we were chatting on site, we considered lots of options. We, similarly thought like a thatch roof or something would be interesting, very primitive hut. Obviously, there's fire code requirements that we want to negotiate and navigate. And so we are imagining for this, it's probably a synthetic wood shake roof structure.
Thanks.
Because you have.
Question, just question. Yeah. No, just focus on these last three. No. Yeah, that's part of the comments with the question for these three. Yeah. Okay, so you don't have anything?
I do have a question.
Okay. And Dave? All right, so that's conclude the presentation.
We didn't actually look at the slides for the garden shop storage, but there was no change since previous. That was, what did we say?
Page 6 of set 7.
Okay, so that's the same as previously proposed, and that concludes our presentation. We're very.
I'll just note, I didn't go through the circulation in detail, so if there's questions, just ask because it's the same as last time for those questions.
All right, so we are going to open public comment for item number 1, Lotus Land. Do we have anyone?
For those of you joining us online, if you'd like to speak during public comment, raise your virtual hand and I'll call on you. No hands raised.
Okay, so now back to the board, and we're going to make our comments, and we'll see where do we want to move this project. If it should come back to this board one more time before it head to MPC or what. So anyway, let's, and I think the way we should do it, we should go through all the comments you have for all the components, and let be specific so we can help the applicant. So Tom, you want to go first? There are 6 components for the project. Huh?
I can do that.
Yeah, just we go through. So the first, yeah. So let's summarize that the first component is a roundabout. Then the second one is the employees' housing. The third is the office by the main building. The fourth one is the pavilion, auditorium. The fourth one, the fifth one is a greenhouse, horticulture building, and the last component is the pavilion and the bathroom and the lower outbuilding.
Okay. And like each commissioner to go through all 6. Okay, great. Entrance roundabout. I liked Rob's comment when we're out on the site about the palm trees potentially continuing around the backside of the wall and creating a sense of entry. I think that would be very impactful. And I know that it's very tight in the back, and I'm not sure what the solution is. The roundabout might be able to be pulled a little bit closer to the street so that you can maintain its size and still get some breathability at the back. Because it's not like you're pulling up to a gate where you need a loading distance while the gate's ready to open. I think also it might have been Rob that commented on the pedestrian access. It looks very odd to cross the street, then cross both driveways, and then be immediately adjacent to the driving surface. It feels more like a sidewalk rather than a garden. To go through a pedestrian door, it almost seems like the pedestrian gate should be down near the kiosk where there's actually manned someone that can watch it in person, see who's coming and who's going, so someone doesn't walk in the pedestrian gate and just disappear into the garden. You'd almost want to have some visual control of that. Then you could have a crosswalk down at that location and kind of avoid the pedestrian at the roundabout completely. Those are my thoughts. Employee housing. I think that there ought to be a little more detail in the buildings. And it seems to me that the layout is, I understand you're trying to go for the um, garden apartments, the sort of thing that you'd see in Santa Barbara, but um, it seems that there's a very nice large garden in the front that no one's going to use, and very, very tiny gardens that the people that would live there would actually use. And we noticed that the building there, they had a barbecue and they had outdoor spaces, and um, we've known the employees over the years, and they're going their own cycads and all sorts of things, and that wouldn't occur in a big public space. That would occur if it had a larger private garden. I noticed that the two-story element doesn't even have a private garden for either floor, where there might be a patio for the second floor and then a private garden for the first floor, so maybe a flat roof over some portion of that. And break the buildings up a little bit more. They seem almost overly constrained, like they were on a very small city lot, where you're really not that way. It could move a little bit around the um, the trees that are there, and or open up to those trees. It seemed oddly isolated. I'll go on. Offices at the main house. I like Bill's idea of straightening out the building and not having an L shape. I think that would make the usability of that what's remaining of the courtyard much more usable. Um, let's see. Also, I noticed that it seems odd that the main house is very simple, no overhangs, a lot of flat roofs, and then you've gone to kind of the stable element, which had overhangs and details, and it seemed like it was almost trying too hard. It should be simpler. I would maybe look at the detailing of the Lotus Land little the old changing building. Was very simple, very handsome. You know, keep the eaves simple, keep the ends simple. The garden pavilion, as I mentioned in my questions, I think again potentially have some eaves on the south side or something to give a little bit of shadow element to the building, and then maybe eliminate the overhang on the very small little bathroom building. Keep it very simple, again, like the changing house on the Lotus Pool. Um, I think there ought to be some landscaping on the north side. I think just even with maneuvering trucks and things, they're going to damage the building. They're going to run into it. It needs to have a curb that's set 30 inches off or something, and then that's an opportunity for a espalier, some vines or something that I think we really shouldn't give up on a building just because it's back of house. We should be able. There will be people that eventually will wander back there or drive by in their cart, and to just see a big blank wall. I think we could do better on that. Um, Horticultural complex. I'm kind of I love the concept of the greenhouse being central. I think it works well. I have concerns again with the pavement right up against the side of it. If you look at the paving in the greenhouses in Carpinteria, you'll notice they've even put in gigantic steel guardrails to prevent people from running into it. So again, if we could just have a little slight softness or landscape or something that could just set the paving away from the building, it might be more successful. And then I think the head house, I think would look great if it had a sloped roof and a tile roof, very simple detailing. I don't think the solar is really going to work that well in the north side. If you wanted solar, I think Elon Musk makes solar tiles that
They-
might work.
I don't think those are in manufacturing anymore, unfortunately.
Okay, it's a good idea. By the time you get around to it, they might be back.
Maybe back.
Um, let's see, the last two buildings I had, storage building, seems like it's a little out of scale. I know when you're in Italy and they have these wonderful little um, garden structures that are rotunda and wrought iron roofs and stuff, they all seem to be a smaller scale that brings people in. It's not the footprint, but just the height. It seems if it was a 7.5 foot column or a 7 foot column, with a little bit of detail, that might be more inviting than 9.
I know we're not supposed to comment during comments,
No,
but
that's fine.
Keely did check the dimension and it actually is a 7.5 foot column.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then the restroom at the bottom, again, overhangs, the same thing. Keep it simple, same as the changing. And then the garden shop, I think you ought to at least study attaching it to the building that's adjacent. Because I think when you get a separate little building, it's not wood shed. It's plaster, it's tile roof. After you do all of that, there's going to be a lot of destruction between the two buildings. You could almost make it a simple shed that leans against the existing building. Would have been more the way, we're all trying to imitate Spain here, is they'd build the larger building first and then they kept needing more room and they'd build sheds beyond that. And that might tie together a little bit more cohesively. I know you can't see it, so those are my comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Let's move things around a little bit. Rob?
Have a laundry list.
Go
I
ahead.
mentioned some of these things before. So on the roundabout, entry roundabout, on the pedestrian entry, I think Tom's idea of actually having the pedestrian access down by the kiosk, there's a lot of merit to that as people come up Cold Springs, and that's the first thing you come to rather than going all the way past everything, crossing driveways and all that. It seems like further back and by the key, like maybe perpendicular to the kiosk is a great idea. Um, the I think as I mentioned before, I think that we're expanding the roundabout and the entry into the site. So I think that the landscaping and those palm trees, I know those are too expensive to kind of go get 3 more of those, but so maybe there is, maybe it's date palms, maybe it's some other cool, you know, BT or some other kind of palm, the specimen palm that's unique that you encapsulate the backside of that. Maybe it's a grove of kenchias in a formal. Anyways, the as far as I think please study the wrought iron detailing. I mean, I thought it was wispy, but maybe that's the appropriate intent of the style. I like seeing beefier wrought iron detailing. I think the columns, as you see historically, there was that squeezed narrow opening and very tall columns, and I think so. I think they need more height. I think would be nice. So number two, I mentioned this day one. I think maybe you started that, but the notion of having some tribute to Ghana Walska on there, whether it's a mural or something that really kind of, you know, um, and it should be on the literature somewhere on the brochure as you walk in, like at least have her name or some area that's attributed to her. I feel strongly about. I mentioned the mountain views. Maybe you have there's like probably 3 spots maybe in the whole place that are really grand, and maybe you have like either an organic or some formal sitting areas, and then it's identified on the literature. Um, Plant palette on those areas that are public. Like there's a few areas maybe that, and I know you have I think you could expand the plant palette. I mean, this is me. I'm big on like people come to Santa Barbara because they like that subtropical stuff. And I think there's areas to kind of, expand that and make it interesting. And that's just a social that doesn't compete with the garden itself, but just, so you can really create nice public spaces. Um, and then the last thing that I wanted to ask this question was, I don't know. It was I mentioned this to someone this morning. About 8 years ago, I went to a big event there, and there was, all these on the Great Lawn. There was all these tents set up, and then there was all these like restaurants had food, and the wineries, and the breweries all had something. Are there plans for having kind of large events there and using the facility for that? And are you which I'm not opposed to. I know there's all kinds of things fighting that, but have you is that part of the vision? And if so, I mean, is it accommodated some way? You know, with maybe it's in the Great Lawn or whatever. Are they going to have weddings there? I mean, where's this?
Where's it going? Mr. Chair, board members, so right now, Lotus Land CUP does allow for 3 large special events per year, 500 people. That's not changing. It also allows for 12 large group visitor events. I'm not sure which one you attended. We're looking at expanding that a bit and possibly allowing for different organizations to be able to utilize the garden a few extra times a year. So we're absolutely studying use as part of this, combined with this master plan request. And the idea is that, we have really special institutions in our community. We're very lucky, very fortunate that way. And Lotus Land wants to be a resource, not just to the horticultural community and visitors, but, to our community itself and other institutions and nonprofits. So we're looking at use, to answer your question, yes, and having the ability for the community to utilize the garden on limited times of the year.
So with that said, I mean, maybe there's the ability for the designers to just do like look at conceptually three possibilities of how it would be laid out, I guess. And I'm assuming it's all mostly focused around the Great Lawn.
That's right. The
Um,
center of the garden, great lawn, area is the obvious, but it's a really good idea to identify where these uses would occur and have some sort of a visual representation of that and how that would function.
and
Chime in just a bit because we did
Uh-huh.
3 studies of locations and that's the main function of this pavilion is to support those events and smaller interior events within the pavilion. But it's currently the pavilion that's next to the main residence. The patio in between is used as like the support for all of those larger events, and the Great Lawn will continue to be what supports those events. That distance is pretty far from, and so when we were studying the pavilion location, we looked at the bottom of the Great Lawn, kind of within, it's kind of a parterre garden near the Italian garden, and then this location amongst others. And that's how we landed on this location, was a study of the configuration and how catering staff and visitors experience it and how that structure will benefit those events. So
Yeah, no, the reason I brought it up is it may affect some of these structures you're building, and where at least you have some ability to have some kind of dual use where, or at least borrow that building for that event or so. Anyways, so I just wanted to make sure that that was thought about in this process. So thank you for all your great work, and thanks for inviting us all there today and giving us the tour. So that was nice.
Yeah, first I want to commend you all on a project of this size and scope. I would normally feel like I'd have more comments, but I think I'm really impressed with how you, from a standpoint of the location of the development and the mass bulk and scale, and how the development could impact the garden and the public. I think you did a really good job. I didn't see anything that I didn't agree with there as far as how you've chosen the locations to minimize impacts and really preserve the garden. And I also really appreciate your focus on preserving the garden and doing what's appropriate historically with what's there now and continuing that into the future. So again, I really appreciate all the work you've done. It makes our job easier. Um, I, I guess, and so I'm going to keep my comments broad. I have a lot of thoughts on minor things, but I think at this level right now, my main concern would be just the architecture. I think, the George Washington Smith and other structures there, they're simple, but there's also subtle character, proportion, detail. The fenestrations varied, and I was looking at those garage doors in the arches. They weren't just a single arch. There was just real subtlety to it. And my concern, and I know your drawings are master plan level right now, but I'm not seeing that in the architecture, except I think I mentioned last time in that the restroom rendering, I started to get that feel. So mass bulk and scale, where everything's located, what you're doing, the height of the structures, I feel really good about. It's the architecture, I think, needs to be taken to another level to be appropriate and the right thing for this special place. And somewhere along the line, I heard, we don't want to make the architecture too charming because we don't want it to compete with the garden. I think it does need to have really strong character to complement the garden. And if it doesn't have that, you'd just be missing a real opportunity. So when each of these projects comes back to the board, I think then that's when I'd get into the more details. But I do agree with a lot of the comments that have already been made, and I would really want to see the architecture. And right now, it seems very static from this view from distance. And when we get into the details, it just really needs to be um, something special. And those are my comments.
Yeah, I'll reflect or repeat what Dave said too. I appreciate all the efforts you put into this. Looks really great. Starting with the gate area, just real briefly, there may be a way to pull that forward a little bit as everybody's described. Maybe that little pipe-shaped island gets reduced down to something much smaller, and maybe you do it with striping so that if somebody's coming from uphill Cold Springs, they can make the turn there instead of going all the way down and around. And you can still have the throat for queuing, and maybe it'll afford you the ability to pull that circle down a little bit and get a little buffer there. I think that's what I'm trying to, and I've heard it from other members too, is, can we get a little more planting between the hardscape and the wall there in the back? Generally, I think, and the comment about the crosswalk, I think moving over is a good one. The caretaker's cottages there, a lot of the architecture and landscape on the site is very linear. There's alignments, there's allées, etc. But there's also paths that sort of meander a little bit. I don't know. I'm just going to throw it out there. It may not be a good idea, but if you're trying to create sort of a village look in that field with those structures, could they be a little bit skewed to each other and maybe more organic interior where it's flagstones that are loose, fountains that are kind of randomly placed, maybe it's something less structured. I mean, I feel like that feels very regimented, and maybe that's not the place for that to happen. I don't know. I'm going to leave that for you guys to do. I think generally the architecture I'm fine with. I think what we've talked about through others here is the little bit of detail I think that's going to need to happen on those to just kind of give it that softness, that George Washington Smith feel. Maybe it's additional iron, I don't know, plantings. Once we see these with plants and such, it's going to obviously be a lot softer. So, but I'm seeing, just maybe a little bit of skewing and twists might make it a little more fun as an option. The solar structure would be great to see what you got proposed there. I think Tom had some comments about how that should feel, keep it a little lower scale, smaller scale. The offices there in the center courtyard, yeah, it still kind of feels like it's getting shoved into a space that's ignoring some of the courtyard. I think the architecture looks fine, but you went a little too far. Yeah, there you go. But maybe you can stretch it long and not have the leg on it, and not ignore that little wing on the admin office portion somehow. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. The Orchard Pavilion, don't really have. Again, I think, which has been mentioned before, just pulling the hardscape off the north side a little bit, just to give a little bit of buffer there for planting. The rest of it's fine. The horticulture building, I think again, if you end up going with something nice, it'd be nice to celebrate a little more. So I'd be happy to see that. The little pavilion roof, I kind of agree a little bit with Tom, and maybe it's weight. maybe there's something because it's really just for shade, not for rain protection, I suppose. Could it be just some kind of a light iron thing that has plants that climb up on it or something? I don't know. If that's not the case and you want it to be solid, then I would try to encourage some kind of roof that's going to work okay on a circular shape like that. Is it metal, copper, or can you get away with something that's thatched that'll meet high fire? I don't know. So, come back with that. And the bathrooms I think look fine. Again, the detailing I think it'll be in the details of all that stuff that we see when you come back. So thank you. That's it.
Stacy?
Yeah. You guys have done an amazing job, especially, I mean, there's a lot to work with here and a lot to consider. And then to all of the budget considerations and how to get this built. On the main entry, I mean, generally, I think it's working pretty well how you have it designed. I'm not sure how moving the pedestrian entry closer to the kiosk when I know getting across the street to the parking areas down here versus down here, and the likelihood of pedestrians being dropped off is more in the roundabout, or people in an Uber, for instance, just how they come to the site. I think it would be rare coming from like the school direction. And so I think you have it placed correctly. Yes, I'd like to see the pilasters a little taller, like George Washington Smith, but I do realize too, you have a 22-foot wide gate, which is extra large. And trying to get those proportions just right and how it relates is difficult. I'd like to see maybe more detail on like what's the middle treatment, the center of the roundabout more when you come back. I mean, is that going to be planted, not planted, just hardscaped? Is that another opportunity to go green? And then make up for the fact that you have less space behind the wall and in that area. I mean, what's the overall effect as you're entering? Maybe that is where I think if we're going to Planning Commission, that's where a 3D rendering might be the most helpful because it's also your first impact that sells this on the public, and we don't want it to feel you are an institution, but you are an institution within a neighborhood, and trying to keep that balanced. And I think that's really important too, because the people living across the street, Tom Cole, the like, they have to see it every day, the school, so they don't feel overwhelmed like the Getty Center. The cottages and housing. Yeah, I mean, my biggest concern about that is the size, just because I'm concerned that too many micro units of housing, that it doesn't accommodate long-term living. And that's why I'm asking, like, who's living here, what's going on? And is this sufficing for those needs? And also you're in one of the wealthiest communities in the United States, surrounded by giant mansions, and then you have these micro units, like what's the relationship and proportion, and can people really integrate in the society if you are in worker housing, and your kids are going to Cold Springs, is it reasonable to live in 400 square feet? I've lived in that. I had to go outside to change my mind. It's tiny. And so, but I also agree too, I think loosen it up, the cottages, the housing, make it feel a little, the garden is organic. I think the housing layout should be reflective of that as well. And and it gives you an opportunity, I think, for more unique spaces for people living in there as well, too, if you just break it up a little bit and not have it so axial. And staff offices, I think, I mean, but the rest of it is all fine. I also like that you have a separate entry down there for the people living in, out. And the relationship to the parking, I think, is fine. Staff offices, I mean, I'm fine with that. That's a difficult space and they're very tiny. I think the Orchard Pavilion is one of your best buildings. I just want to see it more from the front, which is my suggestion of, could we maybe think about moving some olive trees just to give it more breathing space and not have it feel so jammed and obfuscated. And then I agree with Tom's comment too. A little bit of planting at the back, don't just jam the driveway up against it. I think there's enough room back there for a little breathing space, because I think it is a beautiful building from 360 too, and needs to be celebrated like that. And then the horticultural complex, that's my other favorite. section as well. I really think it has the most potential most excitement. Would like to agree about the head house um, that a pitched roof would be better than a flat roof, and I don't see any point to having solar on the north side, especially if your structure's, 22 feet tall. And then are we going asphalt, just straight asphalt, or can we chip seal back there to lighten it, just to give it a
Yeah,
little lighter?
it's going to be budget dependent as we get into the details, but the gradient I think would be asphalt is the last choice, but the underlayment and then chip seal as budget allows. We've also been testing out granitecrete out there to have a permeable vehicular surface, which I've been using a lot lately, and so far it's holding up well vehicular. And so we kind of at this stage are hoping to leave it a little bit flexible, knowing that we at Lotus Land especially always want to choose the best material that they can afford when we get to that.
And the lightest color and reflective and heat gain and all of that. And I really like this ICAD structure. I mean, yes, I think you have to rethink the roof material because I think it's kind of an afterthought to throw a fake shingle on it. But I think it works with cycads. I know it's totally different than everything else, but about cycads, it's an ancient plant and an ancient little round pavilion, something more subtropical, tropical makes sense in that zone. So that's thoughts.
Yeah, so first of all, as you heard from us, we appreciate your presentation today and the site visit, and I think the master plan, I think we can support it. I don't think there's any issue with any of that. It's coming down to I think what can you do to make it better? And so you heard a lot of comments. I want to go. Let's go back to the roundabout first, and that definitely one of my main concern about the roundabout.
Clarify the pedestrian access really quick. This has been a 4-year process. I just remembered why it landed where it did.
Say again.
Would it be okay if I clarified why the pedestrian access is where it is? I just finally remembered because we had studied it being closer to the kiosk. I was just going to address it really quick. We had looked at it with the traffic engineer and the fire department, and that side of Cold Spring has like an elevated asphalt, oversized curb, undersized walkway, and we were told that it would not be safe to increase any pedestrian activity on that side of the road there. And so because there's a sidewalk on the Cold Springs School side of the road, they wanted us to encourage people to walk on that side and then cross at the entry. So that was just how it landed there, just for backstory.
Yeah, so back to this, the more I look at it, the more I'm not even sure how that works. Just because I think everything's so tight, I'm still concerned with the size of the roundabout. This is not the Olive Mill Road roundabout at 150 feet, but I believe that to have a roundabout that works at least properly for the amount of traffic you have, it should be around 70 to 80 diameter outside to outside to make it functional. And so that's one concern I have. I'm not sure if it works or not. Number two is that I'm still concerned about how, you make a lot of sharp turn to turn into the complex. You had to veer over to the right, then you had to make a U-turn. And then why make a U-turn back? There might be cars coming out. And I'm just not sure are we trying too hard to solve a traffic problem that in the end might be creating more problems. So that's one thing that I really want to see it again. And as I said, if you may try to mock it up, make sure that all the cars are not Mini Cooper, coming in and out. You have some big SUV coming in and out. And that's just the one you spend all the money and creating more problems for Lotus Land. So that's the big concern I have. Move on to the housing complex, which I think is a nice thing. And as I mentioned, maybe that's all you want to do, but with the amount of people I've seen today at Lotus Land, I feel the 6 might be too little. And if you have a chance to do it, it costs a lot of money. You might as well try to make a unit a little smaller, employee housing, which is great way to bring people into the community and see if you can do more. But that's just a suggestion if that works for. Then the move on to the next thing about the um, the architecture, and I agree, wholeheartedly with what Dave mentioned earlier. One thing about the tour that as we were move on from the roundabout to, I believe, the employees' housing, we stopped by a little building. What building was that?
Pool changing room.
The pool changing room, is that right?
Yeah, by the water garden.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I thought it was very charming, because that was dated back to what, 1918, something like that.
Yeah, mid 1920s.
Here's what I'm thinking about. You walk through that building, you see it was roughly built. We built what we can back in the 20s, and the Capitol is rough, the stone, I mean the plaster and everything. And I'm thinking, now you go through the next generation of improvement to Lotus Land. You're adding about 7 buildings, big, small, and you walk through them, they all pink, or purple, or pink, and then you look at the detail. You said, well, geez, who did this building? 20 years from now, is it G.W. Smith or Anthony? And you look at that and you say, well, is it a good copy, a bad copy? And I'm just debating on, does it have to be exactly the same color as the original building? Because the site is so large, it's not like you are next to each other. And this might be the opportunity to do something that's really beautiful, to bring it up to the next, Spanish Mediterranean is Spanish Mediterranean. There's many, from Jeff Shelton to, the Monterey. Does it really have to be pink? And that's my concern, because I'm looking forward to, 20, 30, 40 years. And you go through, you might say, wow, this is really a bad copy of what we did in the 18, or the much better copy. And so it's something that I think that we need to see if we can, I'm not sure how the board feel about it, but myself, I think that this is an opportunity to do something that bring to the next level. I don't think that, let's say, the Moody Sister neighborhood, you don't want to build another Moody Sister, that people would laugh at you to copy the same thing. But you want to do something that go with the whole complex, and I think this might be the great project to do that. And so there's still a lot of work to do with the architecture. Maybe you can set a criteria in doing that, and see how everyone feel about that topic. I think that's a good topic for discussion.
I think for historic preservation purposes, it shouldn't be the same pink.
Yeah,
It should
shouldn't
be
be the same.
differentiated anyway.
Yeah,
I
so it
mean,
should be pink.
it should not be the same pink. I mean, it could be a different variation. I mean, I could see a green.
Should be stone building, maybe. Should be
There
something
should be variation to it.
Yeah, and this
Yeah.
this town has a lot of beautiful
Green.
Spanish architecture. Your firm has done a lot of
You could
great
do
buildings, and
Lake style on the top.
probably with the direction from the board or the committee. Let's make sure everything pink. But it's a comment. I think that we should take a look at that, and then the pavilion. So that reminds me of the only one we ever approved on historical building, that's Ty Warner Palapa. And he called it Palapa because it's hutch roof, and it's you were not here, but you were here, right, when they came in.
Ty Warner's?
Yeah, in front the Four Seasons.
Oh,
Camille
yeah,
Moore.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
Huh?
right. I
Yeah,
refuse.
and yeah, so that, I mean, now they are planting a lot of plants, so you don't see it. So maybe, I mean, I think for you, it might be something that's unique because it's right in the garden, and so that's something that you to consider. And then the greenhouse, I personally think it's a beautiful building. It will be a beautiful building. That's the building that people will come in and enjoy it, and so it had to be very unique. And that's something at the next meeting, you can give us some better ideas on the design direction. And so what do you like to do? You want them to come back one more time?
I think we could I'd have it go to the planning commission.
Huh?
I think it could go to the planning commission and then we could,
If it goes to the planning commission, that means most likely they get approval and come back here for preliminary approval. So my only concern is, I don't mind, because a lot of things we talk about, it could be addressed. My main concern about the roundabout. I don't want you to get approval for something and then it doesn't work.
I mean, that is the hardest section.
Yeah, so personally, I like to see the roundabout, that area again to make sure, because that's a very important part of the project. I don't want you to get approval for the roundabout, then,
Can we just see it with cars?
yeah. So
I
that's,
agree. With cars, like it needs to have that scale because that, do you know what I mean? We see the function when we see the scale of the vehicle in the plan, at least. And I also think that's 1 to 3D render as well, because that is the main entry to the garden. And it has a lot
Of the, and we can have the civil send the exhibits if it's possible to send it to you, or we can come back with just that,
my take is that perhaps we can have
one more.
another meeting to address that issue.
Just that. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's been a number of comments made on the architecture, and maybe you folks as a team want to go back, huddle up, decide which direction you want to go. I mean, Dave's comments were great about, I mean, maybe you want to look at taking the architecture to the next level, and between that and the roundabout and some of the other comments made, you don't need to do any fancy drawings for us. I mean, just kind of, address those issues so that we can send you on to the planning commission, really kind of behind you on all facets of it. And you folks are clear about where you're going with it too.
Size, bulk, scale, but yeah, I mean, also too, like.
And if you decide to do, more housing or not, or, I mean, just perhaps one more meeting might be helpful.
Okay, so what I'm hearing really is the entry is absolutely critical to get that right, as the face of this project. What we're trying to achieve as we go to planning commission, of course, is location, size, bulk, scale. Those are the main elements, and it seems like we're pretty much checking those boxes with your board. And it sounds like maybe some of the layout in the housing complex could be looked at. Our goal, of course, is to make this as efficient as possible on Lotus land. It's a very expensive, as endeavor. And so to try to really understand exactly what your board would be looking for, when we come back, it sounds like there's another meeting that needs to happen there at a minimum to look at entry and possibly some of these architectural comments. What I heard in terms of architecture is primarily focused in on the housing complex area. The rest of these areas are feeling pretty good, and maybe looking at the offices in the courtyard.
Some of the comments, it could be dealt with down the line. Some of the comments, it will affect how you present your project to the
commission.
So that's, you heard from all of us.
Yeah.
So that's our recommendation to So that's our recommendation to come back one more time and to address some of the major concern that we have.
Okay, obviously, we want to go forward with strong support from your board.
Exactly.
So that's really important to us to achieve that. And I think we can go, we're going to concurrently be continuing our efforts with the planning department, get the application deemed complete and start working on environmental analysis, and can come back to your board while we're going through that. So we're not losing any time, so to speak. And
I'm not hearing anyone denying any of these
Right.
buildings or uses or anything, the big things that you're really looking for at this stage.
Yeah.
I think we're in support of all the buildings, the units, the uses and stuff like that, just a little bit on layout and function.
which are important elements for the
Aesthetic.
commission.
Yeah, and aesthetic variation.
Okay, all right. So I'd like to conclude today's meeting and thank you, and we'll see you back in front of the board again.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Can a motion to adjourn?
I make a
Okay.
motion to adjourn today's meeting.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.